Dude, one of my favorite parts of this time of year is you drive by all the fields, the cornfields and the soybean fields, and they're getting green, and you can see all of the wildlife just filled with wildlife, like birds and rabbits and deer, elk, all hanging out. And
between the rows.
Yeah.
You know what, though? I do enjoy the green up time of year for multiple reasons. One, there's still an economy alive in the Midwest. That's very important. We may not agree with how all of agriculture is done, but it's still really what supports the Midwest. I know there's things that can be debated in there and all that. I was just looking at there's like this community in Wisconsin where I have some relation where they live, and all the businesses in this town are supposed to decorate I won't say what it is. I don't want to zero in on this town too much, but the same cutout shape, we'll say. And they decorate it based on what their business does, and they have a contest who has the most cleverly decorated thing, right? I was just like looking at what all these businesses are in this heartland town, and a lot of healthcare, a lot of things that are close to healthcare, like imaging or specialty things, a lot of like automotive stuff. And not as much of the other stuff that we think of like in small town America. It's like a lot of the money centers around these few things. And so it's changed, right? Yeah. But agriculture's still here, and a lot of the businesses were small farms that people had. They decorated a cutout for their farm or whatever, the products that they sold from their farm.
Yeah.
So that was good to see. But the other thing I like about it is dirt's not blown out of the fields anymore like it was. There's a live root there to tie some of it down.
Yep.
So I agree. I give agriculture and the way that it's done a lot of grief. Actually, most of the farmers I know are pretty awesome. But and I would say that there is also a growing number of like people my age, my friends, that I would say my age group of the adults has the least amount of money. Because we're just starting off, and they get a lot of local food, a lot of local milk, a lot of local meat. A lot of them do their own bread. Eggs is a really common one, right? And so, and a lot of local vegetables. I mean, it's a big chunk of what we do, and I think that's awesome. I think that part of the agriculture is awesome. But I just want to make sure that people growing our cucumbers aren't having to do it as like a side hobby. You know what I mean? And basically doing it because they love it. I'd love for them to like get paid well enough, but I mean, it's just the world we live in. We're mega centralized. We are super, like even the automotive or the insurance people, a lot of it's branches. Most of the coffee that gets sold is centralized somewhere else. And so it's just a part of the world we live in. And there are huge pros to it that a lot of us would be unwilling to give up. If given the option, they said like, hey, you could get rid of all of these big companies and you have a thriving local market, but you have to give up your ability to stream. You have to buy movies one at a time. You have to give up the ability to stream. You have to give up the ability for cheap food. You have to give up the ability to get any kind of fruit you want at the grocery store. Bananas are only available certain parts of the year. Like there would be a huge list of things you'd have to give up. I don't know if we would.
Well, I have for a while now, through all these interviews that we've done, and people could debate me on this, but just the conclusion that I've come to is that first of all, there is no cure. There's no like, if we all just did this and all this would go away and everything would be better. But I do think that the one biggest chunk that would fix a lot of the problems, certainly not all, and it would create some new ones, would be if we went back to a model where the vast majority of people living in the Midwest had some kind of farming operation going on where they lived. Now, that being said, we would have less soil conservation going on, most likely, because what works with no-till, which is probably the biggest thing for soil conservation, is just the no-till practice. There's other things with that, terracing, contour farming, things like that, cover crops. But small operations can't afford to have like the big sprayers, can't afford the chemical costs, because chemical goes hand in hand with no-till farming. I'm not saying it has to, or that's the only way you can do it, but very close to that. And a lot of the older ways of doing things required a lot of tillage for weed control. And it's just very time consuming. The number of minutes spent per acre is going to be higher in that model, which then takes us to the point that you're making, which is, well, then, the number of minutes people are spending learning how to, do ACL reconstruction surgery or spinal fusion surgery and things like that a lot of people suffered from for basically the rest of their life after they had that unfortunate injury or some kind of major illness, right? A lot of those advancements that we've made, we would probably have to, say goodbye to a lot of those advancements.
Yeah.
Or further advancement beyond that.
Well, and people complain. I mean, there was that big Maha report that came out, all sorts of complaints, and RFK's made it very clear. He like, there's a lot of pharmaceutical practices he really doesn't like, but I would argue that a lot of our advancement comes from pharmaceutical companies make a big profit off of something and they reinvest it to discover, to research
R&D,
and develop.
yeah.
Yep, exactly. And they put in that R&D. Now, how much? I don't know what they're doing with the extra money. I don't know. I haven't looked into the financials of pharmaceutical companies. That's like a place. That's like looking in your in-laws' garbage. I just don't want to do that. I don't ever want to do that.
It's a no-win.
But most drugs, the helpful and non-helpful ones, have been developed because some company got a lot of money from something else and they used it to. So there's huge pros to things being centralized. All I'm here to say is that there's not really any elk in Iowa, and I don't see any birds or anything hanging out in those fields. And there's there's like very documented that there's very few earthworms out there, and there's just like not life,
Yeah. It would be good for us to find some middle ground between the extremes.
If here's what I'll say. If one species in a field is considered life, then Tom Hanks should have had a great time on that island and not had any reason to leave. That's all I'm saying.
You know why Nick has to say it so how would you say that there? So lacking in detail, because Nick has not seen Castaway.
Yeah, that's true. That like blew kids' minds.
And Riley's mind.
Yeah. That's a disappointment.
Oh man,
I know where there's 50 feet of extra rope. Okay, not going back up there.
I just watched
for you,
Scott
Jed.
Pilgrim versus the End of the World. You ever seen it?
Is that like?
Isn't it just Scott Pilgrim versus the world?
What did I
versus
say?
the End of the World?
Oh yeah, no, it is Scott
okay.
Pilgrim versus
I've
the
not
World.
seen it.
It's a great movie. Absolutely fantastic. We got to get started. It's toasty in this room.
Yeah, it is.
Welcome back to the Prairie Farm Podcast, Coffee Time Wednesday. I'm Nicholas Leary, your favorite host, with your favorite co-host, Kent Boucher.
What's up?
Favorite co-host to the coast, Riley Rosendahl.
What's up? Hey, he did it. He's
I
coming out
tried
of
to
his shell.
channel my inner Kent there.
Wow.
Riley's going to be right back. He has to go recharge his social battery.
Sorry.
So when I get here in the morning, he's always here before me. Hey, Riley, how you doing? Good.
Was doing great.
Yeah. And that good that he gives me, that's it for the day. That's his conversation.
That's as high as it gets. Yeah.
Man, but Riley's a machine. He knows stuff. Kent and I will be like, hey, anybody know what this obscure thing is? And Riley will be like, in 1849.
It's Wikipedia. That's all it is.
In fact, I think my dad has one.
Well, I'm gonna add to Riley's Rolodex today. But before we do that, Ken Boucher, what do we got?
Yeah, we got a listener question. Keep sending them in, guys. This one is from Steve. And Steve asked a good question about something that I've thought about a little bit before. Good old Canada Goldenrod. Canada Goldenrod can receive the same treatment as big blue stem, common milkweed. What else would you group in there with? There's so much of it, we don't appreciate it.
There's a lot of Golden Alexander.
Yeah, Golden Alexander.
Did you say smartweed?
Oh, technically, yeah.
Technically, that's
smartweed. All 5 species of smartweed. Yeah, that's technically a native as well. So these are native species that, for whatever reason, have just adapted very well to the drastic changes around. And people be like, wait a minute, I thought we didn't have near enough milkweed. We don't. We do not. However, if you go and look at the worst strip of CRP, or maybe not even CRP, it might just be a waterway, a cool season waterway in the middle of a cornfield with nothing but 100 acres of corn around it, there's a good chance you're going to find a common milkweed plant growing in there. And Canada goldenrod kind of functions the same way.
Is that the ditch goldenrod? Is that the same thing?
I'm not sure. It might be one of its nicknames. Could be. There's also sawtooth sunflower. That'd be another one I'd put into.
Yep.
I'd put into that category.
Really?
Yeah, there's lots of that around.
Really?
Think of like September. All of a sudden, all the roadsides start turning yellow again. It's not wild parsnip anymore, thank goodness. It's at that point, it's sawtooth sunflower.
Better than
and
wild parsnip.
Goldenrod, because that's about the same time as well.
Yeah.
But so here's the question. Hi, guys. I'm enjoying the podcast. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Steve. We plan to. Okay, just trying to get your perspective in dealing with this aggressive goldenrod. I have some planting that's only a few years old, and this stuff has shown up much more widespread than Steve would like. He has a few parcels, some as small as a quarter acre, up to a full acre in size, and he wants to try and thin this Canada goldenrod by mowing. And so he understands that he's got to mow at a timely, interval to make sure that it's going to have the desired effect here. So he's also trying his best not to harm the other preferred natives that he has in there, like New England aster is the example he gave. And he's read that mowing in June and then again right after it goes to seed will reduce its presence. And he mentioned he would like to skip the June mowing if possible and just hit it later on in September. And he's wondering if we have any thoughts on that. And that is a great question.
Yeah.
That's a question I just addressed this weekend. In one of my upcoming production fields, my own, on my family farm, I am in the process of converting an old pasture over to a grass and forb, native grass and forb field that I'm going to harvest seed off of. And there's a pass in there that was missed when it was sprayed, and I got to go back and hit it. And the brome is starting to, some is already pollinated right now, and others are like in that real early phase of producing seed. So I went out and I checked, okay, do I need to bag this stuff? So I did the old tooth test, grabbed the heads off of the brome and gave it a little chew. Oh, good. It's still just mush, right? There's no viable seed yet. So I went in and mowed it off like immediately. I think the next morning I was in there mowing it off, or maybe even later that day. And that story there represents what I would suggest as being the time, if you're wanting to get rid of something through mowing, the time to do it. Look and see when it's starting to pollinate. That's a little bit tougher with things like forbs because they just have a blooming season, right? Grass is very easy. You'll see the little pollen sacs hanging off of the heads of the grass. But with flowers, it can be a little bit more challenging to see. So I'd kind of go off of if there's a strong aroma, probably a lot of
your
pollen.
Eyes start itching.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yep. But also when it's flowering, and I wouldn't mow right when it's starting to flower. I'd maybe give it probably it depends on the species. Some do not bloom for very long at all. Some have maybe a week or 2 week window. Canada goldenrod, I believe that's several weeks. So I'd maybe give it at least a week and a half, 2 weeks in bloom, and then I would go ahead and mow it, because what you're doing at that point is that plant is putting so much energy into the reproductive phase of that season of life that you're damaging that plant when it's taking a lot of its resources out of its roots.
So how do you not destroy your asters, which have a very similar bloom season?
Right. So to go in there with, a bush hog or a batwing or a disc mower or something like that. I hate to say it, Steve, but that's probably going to be a little bit too much broad brush effect to try and do this. So I'd maybe go in there with a string trimmer.
And it depends on how big a field.
Yeah, well, you're saying a quarter acre to an acre.
A quarter acre. Yeah, I'd do a string trimmer, or by golly, if you put a few afternoons into it and you pull them.
Dig them up or
just
something.
Go in or machete them. I did
machete,
a
that'd be
lot
good.
of macheting when I was a kid.
That's why Nicolay has 4 fingers.
Yeah, total.
Between 2 hands.
yeah, total. My brother and I, instead of
didn't Nathaniel make you hold the plant while he's swimming?
No, that sounds like something I would have made him do. Man, he was the younger brother. Let's be clear. I think if you're avid about, if you're a quarter acre, I mean, if you're closer to a quarter acre than a full acre, I would, and if there's just patches where it's really bad, I'd see if you can't get 2 high schoolers out there with you and spend 2 afternoons, and you would pull out full sections and then maybe mow the other sections for that year and then kind of do it slowly. And that way, it depends on how much work you're trying to put into it. If you've got more like an acre, and then I'm leaning more towards doing the mowing and then maybe trying to interseed some more asters later.
Yeah.
But it's a tough. There are pros and cons, and unfortunately, with this kind of situation, you don't go without cons on whatever decision you make.
Well, the other thing you could consider doing, I didn't hear any timeline mentioned, like in his question.
Well, it was June and September.
I meant like a timeline, like how long the site's been established.
Oh, he said it was fairly new.
Okay,
so it wasn't very old.
Something I've always wondered, and I've noticed in prairie plantings that I've seen, is like that succession of plants.
Yes,
yep, absolutely.
It's a great point.
It's possible that you could put some work into it and not get to your dream of having maybe 1 or 2 of these plants per 100 feet. And it may transition over time too. I mean, so I wouldn't give up hope. If it's 2 seasons in, there's the potential that you're going to start to see other things take over some niches. Maybe.
I mean, it's a really good point, and it definitely is true for a bunch of stuff. Wild Rise, that's true. Asters, that's true.
Mare's tail.
Mare's tail. I mean, it's true.
It's a native.
Yeah. It is native. It's really bad when you first start. Yeah. But if you have a good prairie
wood
establishment,
sorrel.
It'll Yep. Even Pennsylvania smartweed. They if you have a healthy establishment of a prairie, they'll take a back seat. But there are species that don't follow that rule. Big blue stem doesn't follow that rule. Switchgrass doesn't follow that rule.
Yeah. But those also are not early successional plants. Those are more when the stand gets older, they start taking over. So to Riley's point, you might be seeing a lot of this goldenrod up front, but 10 years down the road, it may get crowded out itself by where I tend to see a lot of Canada goldenrod is in very low diverse CRP stands from the planting. So they might be a CP1 or a CP2. There just weren't a lot of other forbs in there.
Well, and it's one of the only forbs that does well. If you have just like Indian grass and big blue stem in a field, you'll probably get goldenrod showing up in there. Even from the ditches. It'll make its way.
Travels on the wind really well.
That and like Queen Anne's lace as an invasive. There's very few things if you have an established tall grass that can make it in there. So it is a pretty dominant just goldenrod in general, especially Canada and stiff goldenrod. Showy goldenrod's a little shorter. It doesn't seem to be able. I mean, it can really go in thick, but it doesn't seem to be as competitive as the Canada and the stiff. So I mean, it's a great question, but if you're willing to put in a lot of work and you're closer to a quarter acre, I'd go in. I haven't seen the field. If it's totally covered, then you want to mow. But if you don't want to do that, then I wouldn't skip any mowing. But I would just, like Kent was saying, right as it's putting on that seed head, give it a good mow, and you do that a few years in a row. But then keep in mind you're probably having to interseed.
Yeah. So, Steve, hopefully that helps. Also, keep in mind there's much worse things in Canada goldenrod, unless you have terrible seasonal allergies. Then it might be whipping your butt there. But I wouldn't freak out about it. I'd be patient with it. the prairie do its thing. But yeah, if you want to go in and thin a little bit now you got some ideas for how to do so. Man. Nick's got our topic today, and Peyton's going to love it.
Dude, Peyton, this is for you. We had a comment recently from Peyton saying we were talking about Vermeer's like moon excavator machine, and he commented, "What's going on with wild hogs?" People want to know. So I don't think anybody really was not curious about it, but we should give an update because he gave a couple updates on some of our first ever coffee times. Here's the deal. They're like episode 30s, 40s.
Yeah, don't listen to those.
Don't go back that far. Do not do it. There's like 2 episodes in our first.
There were some great interviews, though, in the early days of this podcast.
Yeah.
If you could only choose one to send people back, first 20.
First 20?
Yeah. That was pre-coffee time.
It's either, oh, man, I don't know. Because you've got, between 3, you got Howard Vincent, Tabitha Panis, and Phil Ebert are all just absolute bangers.
Yeah, I'd say Carter Niemeyer. Story of how wolves were brought to the western lower 48.
Yeah, but I just in my bones am against virtual podcasts. I hate them. For anyone who we had Kyle Leibarger drop recently. Loved hanging out with that dude. Incredible time. I got done with that virtual podcast. I was like, man, that sucked. Just the virtualness of it. I want to be able to caress Kent's arm. I want to be able to give him a big hug afterwards.
I'm not comfortable right now. Sitting between these two.
After that, you can now expect to have every podcast being a virtual podcast.
Oh man. All right. So, wild hogs. I think a lot of people know about them. I mean, most people have heard of them. Here's where they come from. The 1980s. It was really cold in Canada. They were having a hard time raising their domestic pigs, and they were dying. They weren't making it through the winter. So what did they do? They bred them with wild boars.
Russian boars, right?
Yep. Eurasian and Russian boars, both. And they had a super pig, is what they are dubbed. Wild hogs or super pig or feral hogs.
Media loves to do that. They call CWD deer. They call them zombie deers.
Yeah. I mean, it's
nice catch
sexy.
line.
It's a super pig. It's like a kid's movie waiting to happen. But so they're actually pretty fast. Like they run fast. They run way faster than like domestic pigs do. They breed actually faster than domestic pigs do. They are smarter than domestic pigs, and they eat everything, right? So they started, you get pigs that just escape, especially when it's that cold and farmers don't want to be outside as much. They're either escaping or we're in the middle of the farming crash, right? In the middle of the 80s. So a lot of farmers let them go, just released them out into the wild. Yep. And so it's
bad idea.
Yeah. So specifically the breed I'm talking about is I think a subspecies of but there's also like a subspecies in the southern half of the United States. The one I'm talking about is in the Canada-United States border. And right now, some form of super pig causes $2.5 billion just for the U.S. alone, not including Canada. Canada's having a horrible, horrible time with them. And they are on the border. They're hanging out. They're a big deal. They're really aggressive. So like imagine a pack of wild dogs. We had that in Tama County. There was a pack of wild dogs that killed somebody a few years ago. So they have killed someone. In 2019, they killed a woman in Texas. And
that wouldn't be the super pigs, right? That would have been.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're both super pigs, but this is like a subspecies.
The northern variant of super pigs.
I think they were bred separately, but they had the same idea to breed them.
Okay.
And but they harbor and spread disease. Like they carry a lot of diseases for livestock and domesticated animals. So I read over 6 articles. I only quote 4 of them, but there were words like from conservation articles. There are words like eradicate, kill, totally remove. People are not excited about this. It was titles, but the most destructive invasive species in the United States, so it's not a small deal. It's spreading more and more. We are not honing in on them. And I don't know what a solution is. I mean, there are people whose full-time job in Canada on the U.S. border is to kill these things, to trap them and kill them. They're totally destroying crops. Here's another thing. They're eating, obviously they eat anything. They're eating eggs of both upland birds and woodland. What did you call them? Woodland birds, like the
like
the
rough grouse.
Yeah,
and stuff.
yep.
Yeah.
And like turtles. So they're eating turtle eggs. So they're actually really hurting some of these, not necessarily endangered species, but species that are already suffering from lack of habitat. They are doing a number on them. And my only thought was like, I don't know, wolves, but they are very intelligent. So what do you guys think? What should we do?
Well, there's been a lot of work, as you said, they do that much in damage, right? There's been a lot of money and work that's been spent on trying to deal with this problem down in the southeastern part of our country for a long time. And I don't know if there's really been any ground gained as far as like lessening the number of the hogs. I think they've probably have gained ways to adapt, or maybe you can, one of the big risks is crop damage, all the rooting and think of like Matt Hatala's operation. He rotates where he's grazing his hogs because he's timing it so that they don't have enough time to destroy the place before he moves them to another paddock, right? Because hogs have that wallowing and rooting behavior that they can, imagine if, like right now, if you turned a pack of hogs loose on a farmer's freshly planted corn or soybean field, that it'd be annihilated. And so they've this is me hypothesizing here, but I imagine they've probably have found like trapping at certain times of the year can like cut down on the number of hogs during that time of year when your crops are most vulnerable or that kind of thing. Or maybe there's, spring rains lead to more soil erosion. So maybe try and cull a bunch of them, at late winter or something like that when you're right before the wet season comes. There's probably been adaptations like that, but I don't believe there's really been a significant dent put in the number of wild pigs. And also, what would be interesting is finding out how does their concentration has to be growing because of urban expansion, more development, less habitat. So the concentration of hogs into smaller bits of habitat has to be increasing, I would think. I would imagine it's probably part of the situation you brought up, the ground nesting bird problem. Wild turkeys aren't doing so great in the southeast right now. I wouldn't be surprised if hogs are probably a part of that. Habitat loss is determined to be number one. And a lot of people talk about nest predation from raccoons, so many raccoons, that's part of it as well. But I imagine, hogs probably factor into that too. The problem is things start to become accepted when they become a permanent fixture on the landscape, right? And there is in the hunting world, there are a lot of people who love hunting hogs. And now, if you go hog hunting, you're going to probably hear the same words that you mentioned from those articles. Go ahead and shoot them all, eradicate them. But the real question, the real question is, if you were given the power to make them go away, would you do it? And I'm talking to the avid hog hunter, and really a hog hunting industry. You can go down to Texas and year round, you could go and pay money to get on someone's ranch, and they have feeder sites where the hogs come in at night, and you can shoot as many as you can, squeeze shots off for before they all run away. You can do all that. There's an industry that exists around that. And so people's livelihood, one side of it is getting destroyed by these hogs, and the other side of it, there might be people dependent on the hogs for their livelihood. Yeah. And so what is really, the way forward on it? It's hard to say.
And I don't mean any offense to oncologists. I've met several oncologists, incredible people. If I could eradicate their jobs by eradicating cancer, I would do it in a heartbeat. And they're doing awesome things. So nothing against the hunters who are doing hogs. Let me put it in perspective.
Well, I'm just saying that becomes another hurdle because
you might have pushback.
What a lot of states have found, I think Missouri is one of them, is that hunting hogs makes them harder to get rid of, because really the most effective way for getting rid of a large mammal is trapping. And when you hunt them, they become more wary in the woods of people and human presence. And so you might go out and hunt, and let's say you're really good and you can shoot 3 pigs. Well, there were 30 of them. So what about the other 27 you didn't shoot?
Yeah.
And
now they're very aware of.
And you're sharpening the senses of sows. You're self-selecting.
Right.
You're selecting for the spookiest, most.
Right. So I'm saying humans cause the problem, but humans may still get in the way of
what? What
total,
do you think would
total
be
eradication of hogs?
if
Even if you could. I don't think you could.
You don't think we could?
No, I don't think so.
Interesting.
There's so many of them. There's like, 20 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch. Well,
down south, not even. I don't even know how many
and,
super pigs there are.
I mean, pigs can live anywhere, as we've just kind of proved.
They can eat anything.
Right.
I mean, they can eat just fungus. They can live off just eating fungus.
I think the best course of action is, if they aren't there yet, or they're just starting to get into a place, pour all efforts into keeping them out. And I think that's really the only thing you can really hope for. And I don't fault the people. I want to be clear. I don't fault the people who enjoy hunting them, and who
no.
I mean, they're probably not going to go away in their lifetime, and so they're making lemonade out of lemons. So
yeah. Riley, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, if it were me and I had a choice on how to manage them coming into an area, I'd say trapping all day. The traps that they have now with cages, cameras, where you can get a 99% success rate, or, it's different than taking pot shots at a group of pigs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That, I don't know. So let me put it into perspective, though. $2.5 billion. If a company made $2.5 billion and you expected them to be around for the next 20 years, you'd do like a 7 or 8 multiple. So you're talking about a 20-ish $billion quote unquote problem. Let me put it to you another way. We spend $5-ish billion on USDA payroll, right? FSA, NRCS. These are people who are not only helping agriculture, but helping the natural resources, helping make sure that we have sustainability for years to come. We pay them $5 billion a year. So we could let none of them go and eradicate the super pig problem and save half of their salaries. You know what I mean? So it is a huge, huge deal.
One way that I think could help, where you'd maybe have a chance, is if you had enough everyday person. I'm not talking hunters. I'm not talking just, trappers. Those people already are going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm talking people like Nicholas Lirio. If you can convince Nicholas Lirio that a significant portion of his protein diet is going to come from this invasive species, then you could maybe have like what happened during the market hunting days, where you would have enough motivation out there for everyday people who couldn't care less about hunting in any other way, other than the fact that if I shoot enough pigs, I can sell them and I can make a lot of money. Then I think you could maybe get ahead of it. But the disease part of it is...
Yeah, it's not... I mean, they're not getting vaccinated. You know what I mean? They're not getting their shots. And so I think that... I
got to step away for a phone call.
Kent's got to step away for a phone call.
It's important.
It's about... dude, wouldn't it be crazy if he was getting a call right now from, like, Secretary of Super Pigs? And they called him to solve the problem.
They got like this tickling sensation that Kent was saying everything wrong. Had no clue what he was talking about. Kent's probably he's spitballing. We gotta.
No. Here's what I think. Okay. What's going on? They heard the Prairie Farm podcast and they're like, this guy's got our answers.
They're tapping him. Yeah. They're tapping him for his expertise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here it is.
We went 2 different directions there.
Rancher Kent Boucher. Also, for anyone who knows Cowboy Nicholas, so yesterday I was planting. No, Saturday I was planting for quite a while, and I got back and I was like kind of dirty, and I haven't planted. I plant a few farms a year versus years ago I was doing a lot of acres, and my wife, she doesn't know me as like someone who is in the tractor very much. I got back and she's like, man, every time you're in that tractor, I always imagine you sitting there like telling yourself, I'm Cowboy Nicholas. I can do this.
All covered in dirt.
Yeah, self-talk, like telling myself I'm Cowboy Nicholas.
Got to do a pep talk before you get started. Yeah. Before you drop the planter.
That's funny. If any of you guys have a super pig sighting, you're supposed to turn it into the DNR. But we're hoping we're not getting too many of those. I mean, in Missouri, it's definitely a thing. But in Iowa, Illinois, Kansas, Nebraska, I'm hoping there's not too many sightings of them. But so for now, before we go, June 11th is the last day that you can order merch. And we are donating to BHA 50% or more. And at this point, it does seem like it's going to be more of the profits are going to go to BHA, backcountry hunters and anglers. And we're just doing it to help conservation. We know there's a lot of things going on with public land. We want to keep public land public as much as we can. Just as we talked about at the beginning of this episode, things consolidate. And when they consolidate, they very, very, very rarely break up, right? The last time that happened was, 225 years ago when the United States decided we don't want to be consolidated with across the ocean, right? And since then, companies in the United States and the government itself have slowly been getting bigger. So what we don't want is the consolidation of public land to go private, and we want to do something about it. So we're dropping the merch. I don't know if we'll ever have merch again. Thank you to everyone who has ordered so far. The Prairie Farm or the prairiefarm.com or hoxandnativeseeds.com. You'll see it right at the top. Conservation, merch for conservation is what it's called. But for now, we really appreciate you guys. If you got a question, social@theprairiefarm.com, and we'll talk to you again next time.